January 2022 marks the anniversaries of several shipwrecks. We recently had the 13th, which saw a decade since the Costa Concordia sank. And a few days before that, on the 9th of January, it was 5 decades. Yes, I'm right, 5 decades, 50 years, since the Seawise University burned and sank in Hong Kong Harbour. This ship is more famously known as the R.M.S Queen Elizabeth. And so, in commemoration of that anniversary, I'm going to be taking a look at just some of the literature covering the life and terrible death of the Queen Elizabeth. So, please join me as I take you through some of my books. Let's begin by putting the Queen Elizabeth into context. So, this ship tends to be overlooked by its more long-lived running mate, the Queen Mary, despite the fact that the Queen Elizabeth was slightly larger and far more modern in terms of its actual design. Queen Mary was an incredibly conservative design, and the initial design sketches actually illustrated Queen Mary as more of a three-funneled Aquitania, whereas Queen Elizabeth benefited a great deal from the design trends of the 30s, and in particular from the advent of the Normandy. And even though the ship is overlooked, it doesn't stop it from having its rightful place, not only in the annals of history, but also in terms of the literature covering it. And we have a fair few books that look at the life of the Queen Elizabeth. So, let's begin with a more contemporary book. This one is the Destiny's Child, no, Destiny's Daughter. This book is called Destiny's Daughter, which was written just after the loss of the Queen Elizabeth. And it captures the sadness that the maritime community felt by seeing this absolutely beautiful giantess of the seas destroyed in Hong Kong Harbour. This book does a good job of covering the entire life of the ship, from birth to death. And the standout for this is that from a historical point of view, it captures the mood that the maritime community felt in 1973, just after the ship had burnt and sank. There are 2 books that do a really good job of covering the ship from birth to death and won't be a weight on your bank account. This one, and my favorite because this is the one that introduced me to the Queen Elizabeth, is David Hutchings' book, Queen Elizabeth, Victory to Valhalla. This book is actually part of a trilogy of books. The first covers the Queen Mary and the second covers the QE2. And these 3 volumes were then combined into an omnibus, which is basically one book with multiple volumes covering all 3 ships. When I was a kid, I found this book, I was flicking through it, I saw the photos of the Queen Elizabeth burning. Let me find you the exact photos, which are these ones back here. And I instantly had to have it. And this book was my introduction to the ship. Another slightly more modern overview of the life of the Queen Elizabeth is this one by Andrew Britton. This is a breezy, and I mean quite a breezy look. So you have half of it taken up with text, and then let me bring up some images for you to show you. And then the second half of this is profusely illustrated with mainly colour photos of the Queen Elizabeth. Most of them are exterior shots of the ship underway, and let's see if we can find some other shots for you, as well as paraphernalia. Again, this book also does a great job of covering the life and death of the ship. Not so much the death, but mainly its time as the Queen Elizabeth. And it won't break the bank. Now, before we get on to, there are 2 heavy hitters that deal with the life of the Queen Elizabeth. And before we get to those, I just want to take you through 2 sources that deal with the loss of the ship. There is this book, which came out, called Sabotage by Brian Izzard, and this one deals explicitly with the events surrounding the mysterious loss that led to this terrible disaster. We're quite lucky that nobody lost their lives during this inferno. It's also terribly sad that so many unfortunate circumstances and personalities conspired to ruin this triumph of marine architecture. For those historians who actually want to read about the investigation leading up to why and how the ship sank, then you can still find, let me grab it out so the reflection doesn't blind everyone. You can still find copies of the investigation report floating around. The beauty of the investigation report is that it actually has survivors' accounts. So the workers who were on board, how they escaped, and accounts that generally don't tend to be covered. Usually when the Queen Elizabeth is covered in the books, it's usually just mentioned that yes, it burnt, there were rescue efforts, and then it rolled over and sank. Whereas this one actually goes into depth about what happened during those hours as the ship burnt. Sadly, in this copy there isn't too much technical elements, except that it describes how the fire progressed and what got destroyed where. And then in terms of photos, we're actually quite lucky that we have a few. We have some photos showing the conversion, and then obviously we have the end result. So far we have looked at 3 books that deal with the life and death of the ship. We have 1 book that deals exclusively with the death of the Queen Elizabeth, and we have the report on the death of the Queen Elizabeth. Now, by the way, I should also reiterate that what I'm showing you isn't the complete library of sources on the Queen Elizabeth, but these are the ones that I have on hand, and the ones that I can recommend to those who are interested in reading about the life of the ship. So let me take you now to 2 heavy hitters that tend to stand on par with each other. So first of all we have, Clive Harvey's Queen Elizabeth, the ultimate ship. This is a beautiful, authoritative book that covers, again, the ship in incredible detail, from its design through to its dramatic war career, post-war, its early cruises, the North Atlantic heyday, and then its ignominious end in Hong Kong Harbour. Clive Harvey is an established author, and it's also published by Carmania Press that do fantastic books about ocean liners. So this book just comes extremely highly recommended. This one would be a 5 captain's hats. But Queen Elizabeth is lucky. There is one other competitor, and there is this gargantuan 86,000 ton book called Queen Elizabeth. What's the full title? Queen Elizabeth, Cunard's Big Beautiful Ship of Life by Ringo Varisco. Now this gargantuan book also comes with a CD. I need to put this down because my weights haven't trained me to carry 86,000 tons yet. This book also comes with a CD that has plans of the ship, and if I remember correctly, also has sound recordings of the horn. Now, Ringo's book, alright, let's try. This was a passion project. Oh my gosh, I don't need to do weights anymore. And it has gorgeous color photos, so let me try and bring it up before everything else falls out. In addition to, I'll do one more for you, black and white. Oof. photos. Now, that book is a passion project, and literally any element of the ship is covered. What is also beautiful about Ringo's book is that it answers those questions about what happened to the wreck of the Queen Elizabeth after it was used in The Man with the Golden Gun. For those of you who aren't aware, The Man with the Golden Gun is a James Bond movie, and there is a scene where the secret base of MI5 is incorporated into the wrecked hull of the ship. That is all a studio, but there was film footage of the wreck itself that was used in the movie. After filming was done, the wreck was slowly scrapped, and there is about 10% of the wreck left underneath the water, and that part of the wreck is now buried and part of the foundations of the Stone Cutters Bridge in Hong Kong Harbour. That and tons more detail is covered in Ringo's book. Ringo's book would make a 5 captain's hats, but it needed 2 more edits before it should have been published, and for that I take it down to 4.5 captain's hats. If you are after Ringo's book and this version tends to break the budget, a condensed version of his text and with a curated selection of photos is available in another edition called Queen Elizabeth, the Unruffled Cunarder. And that might be something that you can go for instead. I don't have that version, so I can't comment on how different it is from this one, but the option is there for you. So, you've got Ringo's 4.5 Captain's Hats Passion Project, which is an absolutely marvellous, highly recommended book. You have Clive Harvey's ultimate book about the ultimate ship, which comes at 5 Captain's Hats. I'm going to bundle the Breezy Histories, because this one comes in at 4 Captain's Hats. It won't break the bank, and it covers everything you ever wanted to know about the ship. I'm going to give this one 4 Captain's Hats because nostalgia and favoritism, so that's for this one. And this one is 3.5 Captain's Hats because not only does it cover the history, it also covers the mood of how readers felt in 1973, which from a historian's perspective is invaluable. The investigation report, well, it's an investigation report, so no need to rate that one. And then we have Sabotage, a thoroughly researched, fascinating read that comes in at 4 Captain's Hats, which also wonderfully ties up the tragic end of this beautiful ocean liner. So there you have it. Many, many books about the Queen Elizabeth. Take your pick, have a look around, and also if any of you have any other recommendations on books about the Queen Elizabeth, I would love to hear your feedback. And until the next time, enjoy and happy reading, everyone.